Welcome to Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. At a time of major transition for Native Americans in what was to become the colony of Virginia, one man was instrumental in unifying tribes in the region. Powhatan was a powerful paramount chief at the turn of the 17th century. His leadership is regarded much the same as George Washington. Now, the site of Powhatan's birth is threatened by a 3,000-home development, and tribes in the region are working to prevent that. We'll hear more right after the news.
This is National Native News. I'm Jill Freitas. A major conservation project near the Oregon town of Florence has achieved its goal, connecting a large swath of restored farmland to the ocean. The Siuslaw Estuary is a 217-acre expanse that's expected to accommodate the return of salmon, lamprey, and native plants as it transforms with the tides. KLCC's Brian Bull reports.
On a cool, misty morning at the estuary, Dan Kirk waves a burning bundle of sage as they walk through an old dairy farm site called the Wait Ranch. Kirk is the restoration manager for the Confederated Tribes of Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians.
I've been blessing the site almost daily. We really care about this project and just putting as much intention and good thoughts and good feelings and gratitude as much as we can.
Besides the tribes, members of the Siuslaw Watershed Council and the Mackenzie River Trust gather to witness something historic. Margaret Treadwell of the Mackenzie River Trust watched a towering excavator crawl towards an earthen levee. It held back the Siuslaw River from the estuary.
It's really exciting. I have never seen a levee breach before.
After the excavator broke apart the levee, brackish water surged in immediately. People cheered. Chief Doug Barrett of the Confederated Tribes of the Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians watched as the reformed farmland became submerged.
I kind of got goosebumps. It's been a long time coming.
The restoration work took nearly 3 years and $15 million. Barrett shared its new name.
Now it's called Haichiktatu. Haichiktatu is the heart of the river. And so this is a pretty awesome place now to call our home. Just awesome to see the water coming in, knowing that the salmon and lamprey could come in here and hide from all of our predators. It's a pretty good feeling.
4 hours later, a contingent of tribal council members arrived in Lottie, a 32-foot-long canoe. After crossing through the mouth of the newly opened channel, the group sprinkled tobacco and tule seeds into the water. Jesse Beers, the Cultural Stewardship Manager for the Confederated Tribes of Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians, lowered the remains of the salmon into the currents.
When we were in the channel there, almost brought tears to my eyes. Returned some salmon remains to let the salmon people know that it's a good place to come again and fatten up and be healthy, and it's just an amazing experience.
For National Native News, I'm Brian Bull at the Siuslaw Estuary in Florence, Oregon.
The White House has nominated a citizen of the Klamath tribes to lead the Indian Health Service. The nomination comes after more than a year without a Senate-confirmed director at the agency responsible for providing health care to Native communities across the country. The White House this week nominated Mark Cruz of Oregon to serve as director of the Indian Health Service. If confirmed by the Senate, Cruz would oversee an agency that provides health care services to approximately 2.8 million American Indians and Alaska Natives through federal, tribal, and urban health programs. The nomination was announced June 1st. Cruz currently serves as Senior Advisor to Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on Native health issues. He became one of the highest-ranking Native officials in the department after being sworn into the position last year. Native health advocates say the nominations is significant because the Indian Health Service has operated without a permanent director since January of 2025. The agency continues to face challenges including workforce shortages, aging facilities, and growing health care demands in tribal communities. I'm Jill Freitas.
National Native News is produced by Kawanak Broadcast Corporation with funding by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Tribal Development Partners, helping tribes build toward their goals through 105L leasing and essential facility development, empowering sovereignty, strengthening community. More at tribaldevpartners.com, proud supporters of this show.
Support by Sonosky Chambers Law, championing tribal sovereignty and Native American rights since 1976. From opioids litigation to treaty rights to tribal self-governance. With offices in Washington, D.C., New Mexico, California, and Alaska. Sonosky Chambers Law.
Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.
This is Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. The Pamunkey, Upper Mattaponi, and other federally recognized Virginia tribes are fighting to save the birthplace of a revered Native leader from a major development project. Among other undertakings, Powhatan, the 16th century paramount chief, confronted North America's first permanent English settlers. He famously united 32 tribes into the Powhatan Confederacy. He was also the father of Matoaka, who became known as Pocahontas. Today, his historic birthplace on the north bank of the James River near Richmond is listed as one of Virginia's most endangered historic sites, facing imminent demolition by a mixed-use residential and commercial project. Today on our show, we'll speak with two tribal leaders from Virginia about the significance of Chief Powhatan's birthplace and learn more about his legacy. Listeners can join the conversation with comments and questions by calling 1-800-996-2848. That number is also 1-800-99-NATIVE. Joining us now on Zoom from the Pamunkey Reservation in King William County, Virginia, is Kevin Brown. He is the chief of the Pamunkey tribe, and he has been on the show before. Chief Brown, hello, and welcome back.
Wingapo. Thank you.
Absolutely. Also joining us from King William County, Virginia, is Frank Adams. He is the chief of the Upper Mattaponi tribe, and he has also been on the show before. Chief Adams, welcome back to Native America Calling.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
I'm pleased and very grateful for both of you for taking time to join us today and educate our listeners. Chief Brown, I want to begin with you. Preservation Virginia. This is a historic preservation nonprofit. They have named Powhatan's birthplace as one of the most endangered places in Virginia in 2026. Can you begin by describing this area and its significance to the Pamunkey people?
Yeah, the area is up near Richmond on the, as you said earlier, the north banks of the James River, and it overlooks the rapids in the James River, and it's that's where the village of Powhatan was. And when the English first came here, and when Seneca met the English, he was a little suspicious of them, so he didn't want to give them his real name. So he told them to call him Powhatan, because that's where he was born. That's the village he was born at. And the property up there is it's an undeveloped property. There was a farm there, and it's been farmed for several centuries. And now this developer wants to come in and basically destroy it. And we've been trying to work with the developer, and they just haven't been working with us close enough. And so the tribes, we got together and decided that we just need to try to stop this development now until we can, sit down with the right person and figure this thing out, so it preserves the beauty of the place and historical significance of the place. Because we look at this as just as important as Washington's birthplace. Mm-hmm. And nobody would build condos at Washington's birthplace. So we just want all the developers in the county just to understand how important this and sacred this place is.
Chief Brown, two questions. If Powhatan was an alias, what was his actual name, number one? And number two, this event in history occurred hundreds of years ago. How do we know that this is exactly the place where Powhatan was born?
Well, Powhatan's real name was Wahan Seneca. And John Smith made very detailed maps of the river system in Virginia. He went all the way up the James River. He went all the way up the Pamunkey and Mattaponi rivers. And he, on his maps, he denoted with a little longhouse, a little figure of a longhouse, wherever there was an important village that had a chief there. And there's one right there where this current site is that they're trying to develop. John Smith marked it on his map in 1608, and he called it Powhatan. And so we know it was there, and you can take an overlay of John Smith's map and put it over a modern map, and it's right exactly where he said it was. And plus, there's been archaeology that has been done, and so everybody is 100% in agreement that this is the place where Powhatan was born.
Thank you, Chief Brown. Now, this development project would have thousands of homes, retail, and office space as well. What do you want to see done with this land instead of developing it?
Well, we're not 100% against development. It's just that we want it treated as the important historical site that it is. And they're talking about putting over 1 million square feet of commercial space. And we just think it'll be overcrowding the place. And we think that there's a way that the development could be designed so it doesn't destroy so much of the site itself. And so we just want to work with a developer that can sit down with us and work something out and have a mixed use, development, historical tourism possibly, preserve the natural environment and have a limited amount of development,
okay,
but not just drop all this on top of that place.
All right. Now, there is an issue of the land's ownership, and that stems from before tribes in Virginia had federal recognition. Can you bring our listeners up to speed on how this development proposal started?
Well, it started a long time ago, quite a few years ago, before any of us had federal recognition. And so it was in the original talks and agreements, that was before we were recognized federally. And so now we want to take a second look at the site and the development and the permits that have already been given, but they were given out before we had federal recognition. And so that federal recognition changes the whole game. And we want to start from scratch and review everything.
I imagine it gives you more leverage now with federal recognition, does it not?
Yeah, it sure does. And that's what we want to bring into play. We want to be able to, dot every I and cross every T and make sure that we're following all the federal regulations and make sure that we're being good stewards of the place.
All right. Thank you, Chief Brown. Chief Adams from the Upper Mattaponi tribe, I want to bring you in now because the Upper Mattaponi and other tribes in Virginia are all working to stop this development, or at least change the development, have more say in how the development is facilitated. How common is it for tribes in the Commonwealth to be united on a single issue?
Yeah, well, thank you. Fortunately for us, the 7 federally recognized tribes of Virginia, we are all fairly recently recognized, even though we were the first contact tribes of what is now the United States. So we have worked together on projects before, nothing of this magnitude, but we were all under the Powhatan chieftain, so we feel it's our duty to try to preserve this very important property.
Chief Adams, what strategies are the Upper Mattaponi and these other tribes doing to curb this development as such?
Well, we have attempted to meet with the developer and their PR firm, and those meetings started, but then after they found out that we had opposition to that original plan, and we decided that they had drawn up that original plan before they even consulted with federally recognized tribes. We're exercising any options we have. We have worked really hard to get this designated as a historically significant indigenous place in the Chesapeake Bay region. So it's a very important history to the tribes and to the state of Virginia, even though they don't act like it is, in Henrico County, where the property is located.
Chief Adams, what types of discussions have you had with these developers? And in your view, is there any room for negotiation with these folks right now?
Well, I think conversations and negotiations have certainly broken down right now. Before, it was just a meet and greet so we could get to know them and they could get to know us. But then when we realized the magnitude of the project they were planning, this is a 520-acre property that has a lot of historical significance to the tribes, but it's also historically significant to the history of the city of Richmond and the area, because the name of the farm became Tree Hill Farm. And the reason there was Tree Hill Farm is because there was a big tree on it that when Richmond surrendered during the Civil War, the city of Richmond surrendered. They signed the surrender documents underneath that tree on this very same property. So it has been, like Chief Brown said, it's been an active farm. Before it had, natives lived on it, and then it was a slave farm. A bunch of slaves worked the properties, and so I know a lot of native people are buried there, and probably a lot of slaves are buried there.
Okay. A lot of historical significance to this land that we're talking about today. 520 acres in Virginia. Stay with us. We'll continue this conversation on the other side of this break. Celebrating June as Pride Month has become commonplace after the concept was first introduced more than 50 years ago. But sensing anti-gay momentum, a handful of states and municipalities are pushing back, favoring a focus on nuclear families instead. We'll get a look at the state of pride at this moment in history. That's on the next Native America Calling.
Grand Canyon Conservancy fosters visitor engagement with the landscape through learning, discovery, and stewardship. The Grand Canyon Conservancy Field Institute provides immersive and educational adventures designed in partnership with Grand Canyon National Park, including day hikes for the family, once-in-a-lifetime backpacking trips, and art classes with expert instructors. More at grandcanyon.org. Grand Canyon Conservancy supports this show.
Thank you for listening to Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. Today we're speaking with two tribal leaders from Virginia about the birthplace and legacy of 16th century Native leader Chief Powhatan, also known as Wahan Seneca. 6 tribes are trying to halt a proposed residential and commercial development project on the site of his birth. And listeners can join this conversation with a comment or question. Share your perspective by calling 1-800-996-2848. That number is also 1-800-99-NATIVE. And you can also continue this conversation on our website and social media pages. One of our guests today is Frank Adams, who is the chief of the Upper Mattaponi tribe. He is located in King William County, Virginia. And Chief Adams, before break, you mentioned that this property, it's about 520 acres, and it's referred to as Tree Hill. Can you tell us what type of developments currently exist on this land?
Yes. right now there's just it's a large house on it that no one lives in, and a few outbuildings, but mostly it's a cornfield or a soybean field. That's been what it's been used for the last several hundred years. It was just an active farm, but now no one resides on the property.
Mm-hmm. Do your people visit this land frequently, visit the gravesite, or have any other activities or doings there?
Well, we don't have access to it unless we're invited. And so when we're invited, we go there and walk the property and whatnot. But we've only been invited there a handful of times, maybe 4 or 5 times. The first time that I went on the property, I think, was 2007, when another developer had expressed interest in developing the property. And we were all, like Chief Brown said, we were all state-recognized tribes, so there wasn't any rules that they had to even notify us, but they did. And that project fell through because of the recession of 2008, and the developer just pulled out.
You mentioned, I'm sorry, you mentioned having to be invited to be able to visit the property. Who has to invite you? Who has the authority to do that right now?
Well, I guess the people that has the option to buy on the property is Brookfield Builders, and they're the last ones to invite us. Before it was other building firm, Grayland, had invited us to the property. So we've only been on the property 2 or 3 times.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification, Chief Adams. Chief Brown, how about you? How often are you able to visit the property, or most recently?
I haven't been there for several years. 7 or 8 years ago, when we had the other group, the other gray development, I just drove up there one day. I wasn't invited. I just drove up there, and there was a gate across it, and I just hopped over the gate and walked around. But so I haven't been there in the past several years.
All right. Thank you. Chief Brown, you mentioned earlier, and I think this is a really intriguing part of history, that Johann Seneca gave those English explorers a different name, an alias, referred to himself as Powhatan, which is the name of the village in which he resided. Tell us a little bit more about who he was as a man, as a leader, and also his title, Paramount Chief. What does that mean exactly?
Well, he was born up there, near Richmond, and the Powhatan Confederacy was a little bit scattered and wasn't that united. And I spoke with a historian, and they believe there was only about maybe 12 or 15 tribes in the Confederacy. And then he came down from Richmond, basically, and moved to a place called Werowocomoco. And that's where he lived when the English came. And that's where Opie Kankanu, who was the chief of Pamunkey, he captured John Smith and took John Smith in front of Powhatan at Werowocomoco, which is on the north side of the York River. And the William and Mary archaeologists discovered that about 10 or 15 years ago, and confirmed that that's actually the historic place Werowocomoco that John Smith wrote about. And that's where Powhatan lived. And he united the Confederacy from 12 or 15 tribes to 32 tribes. And so his charisma and his political prowess and just his vision and strength is what united the Confederacy. And so he was the Confederacy was together before him, but it wasn't as strong as when he took over. And a lot of it was held together through marriage. He married his daughters off. And so, and the Confederacy extended all the way down into North Carolina under his rule. And so that's why he's, we consider him a paramount chief, because he was the head chief of the whole Confederacy. And there were lesser chiefs underneath him, but he was the head chief.
Powhatan had?
Pardon?
I'm sorry. Do we know how many daughters Powhatan had?
Well, it's been recorded he had 50 wives. So if he had 2 kids with each wife, that's 100 kids. And so if half of them were boys and half girls, he could have had 50 daughters.
A lot of daughters. That explains how he was able to unite so many tribes then, because it would definitely take a lot of children in order to do that if they were negotiating tools in those confederated nation-to-nation talks. So what's also very intriguing about this period of history that we're talking about, specifically with these indigenous nations in present-day Virginia, is it's been very, very romanticized over the year through arts, through literature, through entertainment. But what do we know, the actual real early accounts of how Native people and these settlers in Virginia, specifically I'm thinking about Jamestown, how they interacted?
Well, there's a lot written by John Smith, wrote a lot, and William Strachey, he wrote a lot, and so there's been a lot of documentation. Probably more documentation on the Powhatan people than any other coastal tribe. The English kept very good records, and Jamestown today, they have a lot of those records there, and they tell the story at the at Jamestown Visitor Center, and they tell the story about the English in 1607, and they do a really good job. And there's an Indian village down there, and they try to recreate what the English saw when they first came here, and they have the ships down there that the English sailed in on, reproductions of the ships, and so the history is really well documented, and it's just part of Virginia history too, and it's taught in all the schools, and so it's kind of familiar to us here because we grew up with it, but people in other parts of the country aren't that familiar with it.
Chief Brown, going back to the Confederacy, these tribes, how similar were they at the time in terms of culture, and did they share languages? And I'm really trying to get a feel for just how big what kind of effort went into Powhatan being able to unite so many groups. And were confederacies like this usually formed through diplomacy, like what you've described earlier, or was there ever warfare involved as well?
Oh yeah, we were at war with the Iroquois, and that's one of the reasons Powhatan strengthened the Confederacy. And it was written that Powhatan was speaking to some of the other chiefs from the villages, and he took one arrow and broke it across his knee, very easily. Then he took 32 arrows and tried to break them across his knee, and it wouldn't break. So he used that as an example that if we stuck together, that we could be stronger, and then we wouldn't be at the mercy of the Iroquois who were attacking us all the time. And even some Siouan tribes from the west were attacking us too. So the Confederacy was formed to protect the Algonquin people that were here, so we could not get wiped out by the Iroquois. He used to come down and steal our women,
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of the reason why he formed the Confederacy, was to protect the Algonquin people here in this area.
Okay. And not necessarily from Europeans, but from other native nations, it sounds like.
Yeah, because we know the Confederacy went back 400 years before the English arrived. And so it was an old Confederacy. It's just that Powhatan, in his lifetime, he doubled the size and he strengthened it, because we were under attack just before the English came by a lot of Iroquois and Siouan people.
Thank you, Chief Brown. Chief Adams, I want to go back to you now, and I want to ask you specifically about what we can learn from Powhatan's leadership style and how he had to face a foreign group of people for the first time. And then again, this uniting of over 30 unique cultures into this alliance against other Native nations.
Well, like Chief Brown has already said, that we felt the need to put this Paramount Kingdom together just to be safe. But when the settlers came in, we were curious about them, obviously, but we did help them. We helped them out because they were in a strange land. They didn't know how to take care of themselves, living in this land that we call home. And we helped them the first year. Most of them starved to death, froze to death, and if it wasn't for Chief Powhatan granting permission for us to help them and feed them, teach them how to fish and do whatever in our rivers, that I don't know, the Jamestown settlement would have surely perished.
Mm-hmm. It sure sounds like it would have, had it not been for Chief Powhatan and others, I imagine, as well, that were instrumental. And again, this period of history there, that early contact that Native nations had with English settlers specifically, really fascinating time for us to think about today and talk about. And any listeners right now, if this conversation has got you interested or makes you think of maybe some other information that you might be able to share, or some perspectives to offer, you can do so by calling us right now. And the phone lines are open. Our number is 1-800-996-2848. That is the phone number here at our studio in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we've got producers here who can take your call, and we can get your comments on the air. You can join the dialogue right now here on Native America Calling. That number again is 1-800-996-2848, 1-800-996-2848, or just 1-800-99-NATIVE. And that number works just as well. So join us here today on Native America Calling. We are talking about Chief Powhatan and his accomplishments and some of the history that went into this period during very early European contact in what is now the state or the Commonwealth of Virginia. And with one of our guests today, Chief Kevin Brown of the Pamunkey tribe is on the line. He's actually on Zoom, and he's talking with us a little bit about this history and the significance of uniting so many people together at a very critical time in the history of these Native people. And Chief Brown, I want to ask you again to just reflect more on this period of history and what it means today for your people and what it meant so many years ago, hundreds of years ago, and what it means, again, going back to this idea that this property is now under threat of being overdeveloped, and these developers that you folks are dealing with and their concerns and the negotiations that have occurred or the lack of negotiations that have occurred. What are you hoping going forward that you folks will be able to accomplish or improve with regard to these negotiations in order to have more say and more input into this property and how it's ultimately developed?
Well, it looks now that there's so much water under the bridge that we're going to have to work with a different developer. That's just what it looks like, because communications have broken down, and so we're actually actively seeking another developer that we can bring to the table, someone who has a little more respect for the property itself, the history of it, and more respect for the Virginia Indians, and we can work together from the inception instead of being brought in, in the last phase of planning and developing. So we're really looking for another developer to come in and, just start from scratch. and let's work with the tribes and come up with a design and a plan that's agreeable with everybody.
And Chief Brown,
So that's kind of where we're at.
Do you think that will be possible to break the relationship with this current developer and move on to another developer, or do you think that's going to be a lot of legal wrangling to get out of that previous agreement or contract, whatever it is?
Well, they're the ones who stopped communicating with us, and so they brought this on themselves. But yes, it is this could be a huge legal undertaking. We have the Southern Poverty Law Center working with us. We have quite a few other Native law firms that have offered pro bono assistance, and so we're just starting to get the word out. But we've been trying to work with this developer, but they've basically pulled out from the negotiations. So we're sort of just just holding the bag on this, and if they don't want to come to the table, then we'll go look for somebody else.
All right. The Pamunkey, Upper Mattaponi, and other federally recognized Virginia tribes fighting to save the birthplace of a revered Native leader from a major development project. Powhatan is the name of that revered Native leader. And we're going to take a short break. We'll come back and continue our conversation with both Chief Brown and Chief Adams. And we're going to learn more about one of Powhatan's daughters, who many of us know as Pocahontas, but her name was actually Matokoa. And we'll talk more about her legacy as well on the other side of this break. So stay with us.
Support from Davis Keelan Law Firm, a New Mexico firm standing with Native families suffering catastrophic loss. When tragedy strikes Indian country, Davis Keelan fights to restore stability, dignity, and justice, bringing a voice to Native families and communities for 20 years. More information, daviskeelan.com.
Ready to expand your reach and inspire change? Kaufman & Associates crafts culturally grounded communication strategies for Native audiences. More at kaufmaninc.com, KAUFFMANINC.com.
You're listening to Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. Let's continue our conversation about the 16th century Native leader Chief Powhatan and recent threats to his birthplace in present-day Virginia. Listeners, you can always hear this show again and all past shows on our website, nativeamericacalling.com, and all other major podcast platforms. You can also join the discussion today by calling 1-800-99-NATIVE. One of our guests today, Chief Kevin Brown of the Pamunkey tribe, is on Zoom, joining us from King William County, Virginia. And Chief Brown, I want to ask you about Matoaka, who is also known as Pocahontas, one of the daughters of Powhatan. But before I do, I want to go back, and you talked earlier about how if it wasn't for Chief Powhatan and other tribes and other leaders in this confederacy, those early English settlers, they surely would have perished. They wouldn't have been able to make it there in what is present-day Virginia without that support, people who knew the land, people who knew the resources. But why exactly did Powhatan want to help those settlers? He could have just let them perish, and I think a lot of listeners would ask, well, geez, considering how everything worked out later in history, maybe he should have let them perish. What's your thought?
Well, I've spoken to a lot of anthropologists and historians about that, the very question. But they believe that the Powhatan was very interested in trading with the English, trading for steel axes and iron pots and kettles and cloth, and he thought that that we could be sort of the merchants to other native tribes in the area, or out west or up north, and we could control the trade, and thus making the Powhatan people more prosperous by controlling trade of European goods. And so a lot of people think that he was thinking of that, of us being entrepreneurs, and that's why he let the English take such a strong foothold, because he was sort of interested in the trade and wasn't realizing how many actual people were coming over with each ship that came in. and he was getting older too. And then his younger brother, Opikankanu, who he knew what the dangers were, and he after Powhatan died, Opikankanu took over, and then he started to attack the English and try to drive the English back to Europe. But I think it was because of the trade that Powhatan was very interested in trading with the English.
Mm. Yeah, that's certainly interesting to consider. Thank you for that additional history there, Chief Brown. Let's talk now about Matoaka, who is more widely known as Pocahontas, one of the daughters of Chief Powhatan. And I know there has been an effort to reframe her story from how she's often been portrayed in pop culture and media. How effective has that effort been?
I think it's been pretty effective, but it's been kind of hard, because we've been fighting Disney from the Disney Pocahontas cartoon, and but we've been just trying to get the word out there that the whole romantic idea that Pocahontas and John Smith were lovers is just it's just not true, because she was a little girl and he was an old man, and so that part of the story is not true, and we don't even know if she actually saved him from having his head cut off or having his head bashed in. We know Opikankanu took John Smith before Powhatan. Pocahontas was there, but John Smith didn't write about that until after he got back to England several years later. So nobody really knows if that was true.
Chief Brown, in addition to the false narrative of a romance between Pocahontas and John Smith, what else do you want to remind people about Pocahontas, her life and her legacy?
Well, she was actually kidnapped. She was up living with the Rappahannock tribe, and she was kidnapped from there. And in order to get Powhatan to give up so much corn and help the English, she was held ransom, and so a lot of people don't know that story, that the English kidnapped her and took her to Jamestown, and she was held captive, and then I think the marriage was her way of trying to trying to bring everything to a truce, so there'd be peace between the English and the Powhatan people. That's why she agreed to get married, and then they took her to England, and she wanted to come back, and she died before she could get back here. But she was a real diplomat, and she agreed to the marriage just to try to bring peace here to the colony.
That's part of the story that's always struck me as such a tragedy, that she was never able to return to her homeland, that she died there in Europe, many, many miles from her home. Chief Adams, how about you? What parts of Pocahontas' story are often misrepresented, and do you feel inclined to get the facts straight about?
Yeah, well, the Pocahontas story has been commercialized for sure, and in my mind, I don't know if she agreed to marry John Rolfe. I think she maybe was forced to marry him, and then they took her to England to keep her away from Chief Powhatan, and that she died and is buried over there, and the English treated her as like a queen almost, but the same thing is, I think she was forced to go to England as opposed to going to England because she wanted to go see another land.
Chief Adams, it's clear that she was really young, a child, when she first met John Smith, but by the time she was actually married and then traveled to England, do we know about how old she was at that point?
No, but it seems like the historians seem to think she was 20 or 21 years old.
Okay.
Is what I've heard.
What more do we know about her life in England? I mean, you mentioned that she was treated like royalty, but after she was captured and that whole period of her life, again, I mean, the culture shock. I think a lot of us here listening to the show right now are just thinking like, wow, what would that have been like for somebody, a young Native woman during that time in history, so far from home in a world that is just completely foreign?
Oh, yeah, I agree. And, basically, she had no chances of surviving there because of all the diseases and population of people over there. And her body didn't have any immunities to any of the diseases that were active in England at that time. So she was pretty much doomed when she left and went to England.
Mm-hmm.
Because it just didn't have, we didn't have those diseases. The English brought disease to us.
Chief Adams and Chief Brown both, I would like you to both chime in here on this next question, because I am obviously not a Native person from a Virginia tribe, but in my lifetime, I can't tell you how many people I've met over the years who claim to be a descendant from Pocahontas. And I'm sure you get a lot more of those people, that you come across a lot more of them than I do. But when you do encounter that, how do you respond to those claims? Chief Adams first.
Well, I try really hard not to roll my eyes when they say that, but it's I don't know how I respond is that I listen to them and wonder where they're getting this information from. Because back then, 1607, 1615, whatever, there were not enough records and all to be able to trace your lineage back to Matoaka or Pocahontas.
Chief Brown, how about you?
Well, a lot of times, I mean, just like Chief Adams, he's met a lot of people that, come up to us and say, I'm a descendant of Pocahontas. And I say, well, I'm not a descendant of Pocahontas. Pocahontas is a descendant of us. And so we're sort of on the other side of the coin on that. And once you tell them that, then they kind of back down a little bit. But we've had at least 100 inquiries, people who claim to be descendant of Pocahontas who want to enroll as a tribal member, and we tell them, that's not an accurate or authentic reason for enrollment. She's a descendant of us. We're not a descendant of her.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the Disney movie earlier, and it's been like almost 30 years, maybe more than 30 years since that movie came out. And I know it's really dated now, and there's just a lot more awareness with regard to authenticity with Native Americans on film and in other areas of entertainment. But I know Disney's looking at, bringing a lot of their stories back, and they're looking to reproduce some of those older films. And I imagine Pocahontas could potentially be one in the future. If that occurs, what would you like to see happen? How would you like to see that project potentially move forward, Chief Brown?
Well, they just would have to be more accurate. Pocahontas was a little girl, and John Smith was a grown man, and there's no evidence at all that they had any kind of romantic relationship. They were in the same place at the same time at Werowocomoco. We know that, but John Smith just fabricated the story because, and then when she was captured and taken to Jamestown, she eventually met John Rolfe, and that's who she was married to. But the whole John Smith Pocahontas story is just it's just fantasy, really.
All right. I want to also talk about language a little bit. I know there has been an effort to revitalize the Powhatan Algonquin language. Chief Adams, how is that coming along?
I think it's coming along well. I mean, again, this is another collaboration of the tribes of Virginia that's working on this language revitalization, and so each tribe has a representative at the thing, and they're working with some language experts and trying to revitalize the Algonquian language, and we're hopefully going to soon start putting it on video or tapes or things so that you can listen to it and try to learn the language, so our tribal citizens can listen to it and start learning the language and speaking the language. Our goal is to revitalize the Algonquian language and maybe even get it taught in the public schools around here as a elective language. Instead of French, we'll speak English, Spanish, and Algonquian.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my goal.
What's the current state of the language? Can you give us a general idea of, like what level of fluency or just how much, how active people are in taking classes or learning more about the language?
Oh, yeah. People are really excited about learning the language. And we have a lot of words. We have a lot of words out of the Algonquian language. Our struggle is to put the words into a sentence now. So, and that's what we're working with mostly. But yeah, I mean, if we can get the words into sentences, I know tribal citizens will embrace it wholeheartedly because they want to learn the tribe's original language.
All right. Thank you, Chief Adams. I want to go to you, Chief Brown. We've got about a minute and a half here before we need to wrap up the show, so I'll probably give you the last word here. Anything else that we need to know or understand about Chief Powhatan and these other events that we've been talking about with regard to history in what is current day Virginia?
Well, there's two sides to every story, so we're trying to rewrite the Virginia history from a Native perspective. And here at Pamunkey, we have one of our tribal citizens has a PhD in anthropology, and so we're currently working at our museum, and all the other tribes are working, on their reservations and in their territories, and we're writing our own history and bringing this history to the public. And we're combining oral history and other Native history from around the country, along with English records, and trying to get a more realistic view of the way things really happened. Not from a European perspective, but from a Native perspective, but using some of the European documentation that was written down. So we're all working on displays in museums and interpretive centers and cultural centers, and each tribe is doing that on their own. And we're sharing a lot of information with each other. And federal recognition has helped a lot as far as grant money and different BIA programs that we're working on. So we're retelling the history, and so stay tuned. And we're going to get together and we're going to give the real history and a much more broader perspective.
All right. We will stay tuned. But for now, we've got to wrap up the conversation. So thanks to our guest today, Chief Kevin Brown, and also Chief Frank Adams. Join us again on Monday as we hear from Native LGBTQ2 plus advocates about what pride means at this time in history. And I also want to give a shout out to our hardworking crew here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, production crew who work hard to bring Native America Calling to you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, live for our listeners, and also our parent corporation, Quantic Broadcast Corporation, up in Anchorage, Alaska. Have a great weekend. I'm Sean Spruce.
Trickster Cultural Center, an authentic first voice of Native American cultural arts, will host the 2026 All My Relations celebration, honoring diversity through Native drum and dance, artistry, resource exchanges, and vendor fair. Trickster Cultural Center's All My Relations celebration is open to everyone at no charge June 20th from 2 to 6 p.m. in Schaumburg, Illinois. More under events at tricksterculturalcenter.org or at 847-301-2090. Trickster Cultural Center supports this show. Who protects Indian country? Amerind does. As the only 100% tribally owned insurance carrier, Amerind helps strengthen tribal communities by providing reliable insurance coverage and keeping dollars in Indian country. From property and liability to commercial auto and tribal workers' compensation, Amerind is here to protect what matters. Celebrating 40 years of serving Indian country. Learn more at amerind.com. That's AMERIND.com.
Native America Calling is produced in the Annenberg National Native Voice Studios in Albuquerque, New Mexico by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation, a Native nonprofit media organization. Funding is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting with support from the Public Radio Satellite Service. Music is by Brent Michael Davids. Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.